Uh, Welcome everyone to the next MCLE presentation by the Hellenic Law Society. And I want to welcome my former colleague and still friend, Jack Lucky. Jack and I were colleagues at the District Attorney's Office in Riverside County for many years. He got to the bench a lot sooner than I did, and he left before me. So, but Jack has a long and distinguished history on our court, and he served in family law and civil cases, and I'm sure you did a few criminal cases too. You had to have done those, but he also served in administrative roles on the court. And if anybody was savvy about technology, it was a Jack Lucky.
A picture up there. I'm like,
And 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 I just want to say that whenever he was like our own IT guy, but he was a colleague who was an IT guy. It was, hey Jack, can you help me fix this? And like that, he was perfect. But he's a brilliant person. Continues to love technology, self-taught in computer code. I mean, how many computers have you built yourself? Desktops. I can't even count, probably.
A lot, but I have stopped doing that. I just
Okay.
buy them off the rack now.
Okay. Good for you. Good for you. But I wanted to bring Jack here to our organization because I knew he would be somebody who could speak as from a legal perspective and from a judicial perspective, and now, of course, from a mediator's perspective, a neutral's perspective, on the impact that we can perceive that AI will have on the profession. And there's multiple, I think, implications to it, other than just turning to AI to write a brief for you. And I'm sure he will talk about that. But I think that we are all being confronted with a technology that probably many of us don't understand very well and not well enough. And it is projected to, let's be frank, replace workers in a variety of ways. It will probably happen, just like every other technology that disrupts our economy, right, over the years. From one form of technology to the next, people have always been left behind, but new people adjust to it as well. So I want to again personally thank Jack for being so amenable to meeting with us. And please welcome Judge Lucky. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to the Hellenic Law Society for having me. AI is something that I've been ambivalent about. It's interesting. When it first came out, as Steve said, I program computers as a hobby, and the first thing that I saw that AI was useful for, other than image generation, was for code generation. And my results have been mixed. And so there are a few things that I want to cover today. I want to cover an introduction to the technology, and we'll have a resource sheet that comes out. I have links in the resource sheet. It's a PDF that I emailed to Stuart, and it has resources primarily from like the California Bar, the American Bar Association, Thomson Reuters, but different sources kind of with some ethical caveats, with some practical caveats, and then some practical advice on how we're going to use AI in our practice. And notice I said how we're going to use AI in our practice, because I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of when. And for some of you may have already adopted AI into your practice, and some of you may have adopted AI without even realizing that you've adopted AI into your practice. And I want to talk about some of the pitfalls of all these tools that are now incorporating AI that we might be using in our practices that we need to be careful about. So, what I want to do first, though, is get an idea as to how many people have used AI for any purpose, and it can be a personal purpose, it can be a professional purpose. But let's just do a show of hands, and you can. I don't have all of you on one screen, unfortunately. So if you know how to use the hand raising feature where it says uh,
React.
what's that?
I think it says
Yeah.
react.
So if you click the little heart that says react, and then you can raise a hand. Okay, so I've got a few people who have. I see about 4 or 5 responses uh, out of our group. Okay, so a significant number, but not a majority. So what I want to do first is let's just kind of take a look at the tool and get comfortable with it. And what I suggest you do is you get on your phone or you get on your computer if you have the ability to multitask on your computer with some facility, and go to, and it doesn't matter which one you use. You can go to Google Gemini, so that's gemini.google.com. You can go to ChatGPT, which is I think it's chat.openai.com. No, it's just chatgpt.com. And then you can go to Claude, which is claude.ai. Now, with some of these, I registered with some of them a long time ago. So if you've already registered with one, my suggestion is just go to one that you've already registered with. If you're new to it and it asks you to register, then register. All of them have a free service. We're not going to do anything that's confidential here. And what I want to do is some really simple stuff just to get an idea of what the capabilities are. And so what I'm going to do while people are registering, I'm going to go ahead and screen share. And this is Claude. We're going to cycle through these. So Claude is the one that I tend to use the most. That's not necessarily any kind of endorsement, but what I appreciate Claude's privacy model, and I can talk a little bit about that. You can go to ChatGPT. Again, we're not going to be doing anything that includes any kind of confidential client information, so I think we can safely use ChatGPT. Its privacy model is much different. There's Google Gemini, and I've just started to use Gemini recently. I got the impression that you can kind of opt out, but I haven't done anything where I've put any kind of personal information into it. I've used it again just for computer coding so far. And then I'm going to do some demos of the Westlaw product. Now, I'm not endorsing Westlaw over LexisNexis. It's just that JAMS, where I work, we get a subscription to Westlaw, and we can get the add-on for the AI product, CoCounsel, which is here. So this is CoCounsel, which is Thomson Reuters or Westlaw's product. And I'm going to go through all of these and kind of show you some easy stuff, then some more intriguing stuff as we go through. So I'm going to use Claude, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Nashville next week. And so what I want to say is I'm spending a week in Nashville. I'll be downtown without a car.
And you're from Costco?
I'm sorry? Okay, I think I might be getting a little background noise there. So I'll be downtown without a car. Where are places I can walk from the Conrad hotel or dinner that are highly rated. Okay. And so the nice thing is that the AI is always happy to see you. And it says, I'll be happy to help you find some stuff. I'll increase the font size of this a little bit so everybody can read it a little more easily. Now, this is something fairly recent. And one of the things that's interesting about the landscape of AI is if I would have asked this 2 months ago, it would not have done this comprehensive web search. But now most of the AIs are doing a comprehensive web search where you can actually see where they're getting their information. So you can see it went to the Hilton Hotel website, went to Yelp, went to TripAdvisor, went to Booking, kind of did the things that many of us might do. Now it has some results. And then I can scroll down and it says, oh, here are the restaurants at the hotel. Here are a few minutes walking. Here are a 10 to 20 minute walk. And then it gives me those options. Let's do something a little more challenging because one could do this with a robust web search. So I have Wednesday, April 30th, free to do what I want. I already have trips to the opera, or I should say a trip to the Opry planned, where give me a 4-hour walking tour for the day. And let's see what we get. Okay, so it goes hour by hour, tells me where it's suggesting I should walk. Gives me some notes, tells me it could be warm, and tells me about different attractions. So one thing that happened to me recently, my family and I went to the Coliseum. We got a tour. The tour guide apparently got sick and didn't show up. So I told ChatGPT to give me a walking tour of the Coliseum. And it did a beautiful job of telling me where to go. It actually took me into the right sequence, told me where to enter, what to look for the entrance. And you can always ask follow-up questions of the AI. Something else that's kind of fun that I like to do is I have celery, onions, carrots, salsa, and a flank steak in my fridge. Give me a recipe. And you can see in fairly short order, it gives me a recipe. Sometimes these look terrible. Sometimes they look pretty good. But you can see that like now we're getting into the area where this is something other than just a web search or condensing what's on the web. The other thing that I've started to use it for a lot of the time, and it's not great at doing this, and this is where we start getting into my personal caveat. And what I say is, I heard a mathematician once say that his experience with AI was similar to a mediocre but not incompetent grad student. And so how I always look at AI is that this is a mediocre but not incompetent personal assistant a mediocre but not incompetent secretary, a mediocre but not incompetent law clerk or law student or first year associate. So I needed to write a letter of recommendation. I got last minute notice that they wanted it like the next morning. I was very busy at work. So I said, we'll start a new one here because I don't want it to have the context of the recipe. Help me write a letter of recommendation for someone who, and we'll do it this way, for an aspiring judge who started out as a file clerk, became a supervisor for support staff, went to law school, became a deputy district attorney, and is now applying for the bench. This person is kind, firm, timely. We're going to stop there because it'll take me a little bit too long to type the rest of this. But
I think, Jack, I think I know that guy.
Okay. Now, this is going to be an apocryphal story, but work in a paragraph about how this person helped me file a brief at midnight, right before the filing deadline. I didn't ask, he volunteered. He saved the case. I mean, obviously, this is very generic, but what it's going to do now is revise, and it's going to put in this story. Okay. Now, I hate this writing style. What I find is that these AI tools tend to use a lot of adverbs, which I don't like. Okay? So now I'm going to say avoid adverbs, prefer active voice, use short words. If you can, ask me if you have any questions. Okay. It's getting better. Now, there is no way that I would actually use this as a letter of recommendation. But now what I have is something where I usually can use about 20 to 40% of a letter of recommendation like this and use that as my rough draft or my first draft, or at least my outline, because it's organized it well, right? It talks about why I'm writing, talks about the background, talks about these great things that he's done, talks about my fake anecdote, talks about the 3 traits that I asked it to highlight, and then comes up with some, I won't say insightful things, but things that I didn't tell it to say, right? The need for fair rules, the weight of the state's trust. And so, again, not something that I can use as work product or even a letter of recommendation, but something that gets me past the blank page, right? Something that now I can edit instead of write. We'll do something a little more challenging. What I always suggest when it comes to legal drafting, if you choose to use it for something like legal drafting, is never have it write something that you don't know, right? Because that's not what you would give to a law clerk. You would not give a law clerk something and say, write this for me and I will file it with the court sight unseen, right? You give them something that you know fairly well, and then you, oh yes, there are checkers to see if something's AI written. And so again, I highly recommend that you don't just use this to write, but that you use it as an outline, right? And so what we can do is say, help me outline a brief saying a brief on employment discrimination, where the allegation is that the supervisor went out of his way to say good morning to a female subordinate. We'll say every day. So again, we're not asking it for any type of legal analysis, but just, all right, just give me the outline so that I can do something with it. Right? So this is one thing. I'll tell you what I do all the time, and I'm going to show you exactly what I did when I was first asked to teach on AI. Somebody else was supposed to teach on AI, and I didn't have much experience with AI, but they knew that I was a computer person. And they said, what's the title and description? And I thought, I have no idea what the title and description are. You've asked me on the fly to come teach this thing, and I haven't really used it. So help me come up with a catchy title and description for a 1-hour CLE on the impact of AI on the legal profession. Let's see what it gives us. Okay, so this isn't bad. Beyond the brief, how is AI reshaping the practice of law? Talks about the transformative effect. Now, here's a trick I use all the time. Give me 10 more. And I just figured the law of averages will find me one that isn't terrible, right? And I'm just going to arbitrarily pick one. Okay, so we'll use, I like number 4, but make it whimsical. Okay, again, would you necessarily use this wholesale? No, but as I'm trying to come up with ideas and I'm just brainstorming, what I find is it's like having a mediocre assistant to help me brainstorm, right? Give me some ideas. Here's some other ones that are just, again, kind of a generic. I have a difficult mediation coming up. My client thinks the case is worth 10 times more than it is. What can I say to the mediator to guide her without compromising confidentiality? Okay, now some of this stuff is super obvious. Some of this stuff is straight out of the Getting to Yes book with the focus on interest rather than positions, right? Give me a dozen things I can tell my client to help us work toward settlement. And obviously, this is really generic. The more specific you get with it, the better it can go. But these are areas where I think, all right, we're not giving any confidential client information. We're not thinking like this is going to give us a script for our mediation. We're hoping for a nugget, right? One question or one comment that we may not have thought of that another set of eyes might give us so that we can be a little more successful. And again, every time I get 12 results that I don't like, I just keep on saying, give me 12 more, give me 12 more, until I get something that I think, yeah, you know what? I can twist that. I can work with that. I can frame that in the way that I would like to say it. Now we'll get to something maybe a little more challenging. There is a case dealing with discovery objections. It says that vague or ambiguous objections are improper unless the request is so unintelligible that the responding party cannot form an intelligent response. Can't find it. Any ideas? And we should say, let's say California appellate opinion. We'll be a little more explicit. Okay, so it cites Obregon. I was actually looking for the Sembrook case. And here's the interesting thing, is that when you do these things with AI, they're what's called non-deterministic. In other words, you don't get the same result every time. So the first time I asked this question, because I literally couldn't find it on Westlaw, it gave me the case that I was looking for, which was Sembrook. In subsequent times doing this, it hasn't given me the case that I've been looking for. And so this is back to where it's mediocre. It's not great. But where it does do a decent job, and this was kind of fun, was I was trying to explain to a student one time why something was or was not hearsay. And I said, explain to a law student why I am, let's see, Brad Pitt would not be hearsay if offered to prove that the person was incompetent. We'll say the declarant, who is not Brad Pitt, was incompetent, but I believe I am Brad Pitt, would be hearsay if offered for the same purpose. And it nails it. It gets it exactly right. And then we can say, do you have any California published decisions on point? My guess is probably not, but we'll see. Okay, so couldn't help me out with that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to show you the difference between that and an actual legal research tool. The one thing that we're going to see is that, unfortunately, the AI search in Westlaw Precision, and again, I don't know, LexisNexis might be a lot faster, but you're going to notice that it's a slower process. Okay, and so what I suggest is that if you're looking for something quick and it doesn't involve confidential client information, you just want a quick head start. I always start with Claude because it's faster, and if I get the answer that helps me, I'll go to the citation and look at it, and if that works, then I'm okay. But as you can see, if we go to Westlaw Precision, it's not that it's a bad tool, but it is a slower tool in terms of its response. It even says, email me when the response is ready. So we're going to leave that aside for right now. We're going to come back to it and see what it gives us. Okay. Now, again, we don't want to do anything that is difficult with AI, but the rote things that we hate doing. Write a paragraph explaining the California standard for sustaining or overruling a demur. Please include citations. And you can actually do this. Don't make them up. Ask me if you have questions. And let's see what it does. Okay, it gave us the right case, Blank versus Kerwin. That's our seminal case on demurs. In California, when reviewing a demur, courts accept as true all material facts. Okay, not bad for a memo. Now what we're going to do is rewrite it for my opposition to the demur. Okay, again, it's not a work of art. Now, we all heard about hallucinations. Now, here we know Blank versus Kerwin. You know, we're in pretty good shape there. We know the Kellerman case. These other ones I'm not as familiar with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that. All right, so here we go. We're going to pop back to our AI assisted research in Westlaw. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so we can see it. And what we can see is that the beauty of this is it gets the same legal principles, gives us the same explanation, but now we have citations. But I'll tell you that a lot of the citations that I get through this process are incorrect. Okay, so how do we check them? And the beauty of these legal ones is I can click on the case, and I shouldn't have clicked on the case. So I should have shown you something else first, but it takes me directly to the case so I can double check its work. But the nice thing about these legal tools as well, we'll wait until the page reloads, but it shows you the Westlaw product, and I believe the Lexis product does as well, shows you the context of where it's getting its information. So you can look at the case citations directly, you can take a look at the language and see if you like it. All right, now we're going to go to another AI tool.
Jack,
Yes.
let me know when I can ask you, pose a question on behalf
Please
of the group.
ask questions whenever. I'd rather
Okay.
answer your questions.
All right. So, question is, which of all the AI apps that are available, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, is the safest to use from the standpoint of confidentiality? For example, entering confidential case facts and asking a question related to those facts and their possible legal significance. Should
Excellent
we redact?
question.
Should we redact identifying information such as the name of parties and the like?
Great questions. All right. So the safest is going to be one of the legal tools, right? Westlaw, Lexis, but the places that are run by lawyers to do your research and have greater understandings of the legal context for confidentiality. However, there are a number of resources that are safer than others in terms of the default settings for privacy. Okay, so I'm going to say that generally speaking, and this may change. So I realize this is being recorded and the landscape may change significantly in a month because with AI it seems to. So understand these caveats. But one of the things that I did was I looked. The thing about ChatGPT is that ChatGPT by default uses your prompts and data to train its model. Okay? And so by default, it's consuming your data and it is not staying private. Are there ways to mitigate that? Yes, there are. Are there enterprise options available or subscriptions available that allow you to be HIPAA compliant and SOC compliant? Yes, there are. Do I know what those are? No, I don't. Okay. But I put this onto the resource sheet that you'll be receiving today. What you want to do is do things like look for the trust center, and you want to look for the privacy information. So what I'm going to do, just because this is the one that I'm familiar with, again, I'm not endorsing, I'm just saying, so Claude Trust Center, and it's really the Anthropic Trust Center, because Anthropic is the company that has Claude. So we're going to go to their Trust Center. And then again, this has changed quite a bit, but you can see the Trust Center says, hey, if you use Claude via Anthropic's API, and I'll talk about what that means in just a little bit, then it's even HIPAA compliant. Okay? And it meets these different standards. And the nice thing is that with these compliance standards, the Anthropic page shows you which these are and gives you information as to what type of data and privacy protections are in effect. This page has changed significantly since the last time I visited it, which was a week ago. Okay. So there, again, when it comes to the rapidity with which AI is evolving and the privacy practices are evolving, it's going really fast. So I just want to make this really clear because this is being recorded. You need to check and see what the current state of the art is for the tool that you're interested in doing. But the reason that I kind of default to Claude is that their regular stuff. Now, you'll notice that this says Claude via Anthropic's API, which I'm going to talk about later. But this is not the regular Claude through the web client. Okay. So the Claude through the web client, FAQ here, and the FAQ talks about all these different standards, safety and transparency. So you can look through these. And this is one of the reasons that I started using them was because they made this information easy to find for me. Okay. Now, the other providers may have it easy to find as well. It wasn't as easy to find for me. But here we have, is Anthropic willing to sign a BAA? For those of you familiar with HIPAA, that's a business associate agreement. And basically that's what they're, that seems to be kind of what you need to ensure HIPAA. But this doesn't tell us if you're using the web interface. So I can tell you with the web interface that's in the privacy section. I see that we're running short on time, so I'm just going to summarize this. But basically, Claude's default position is they do not use any of your data or the information that you upload to train their models. Okay? And they retain your data for 30 days for compliance purposes, for legal purposes, to respond to subpoenas, at least as of the time that I looked at it a week ago. And then they delete any information that you've used after that, unless you're retaining it. They also say that they don't share it with anybody unless you explicitly ask it to, or if you give it a thumbs up for its result, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So if you seek review or give it a review, then it does make it part of its database. So the thing about Claude versus Anthropic's API is you don't want to get into this on your own, but if you use an application that says we use Claude behind the scenes, basically, then that means they are using Claude's API, application programming interface. So for instance, I have a database program that I use on my local computer, and just 2 weeks ago, it came out with a Claude integration. And because it has that Claude integration, it means that it's using Claude's API, application programming interface, and that means that it is compliant with these different standards, or can be compliant with these different standards, which are about as private as you can get when it comes to HIPAA. And the SOC is an accounting standard. The ISO is an international standard. Strangely, there is no published standard for confidential client information for lawyers. Why that is, I don't know, because all other, the healthcare industry and the accounting industry have them. For some reason, we don't. Okay. But if you're looking at these different types of compliances, these are about as stringent as you can get. So this is why I kind of gravitate towards this product as opposed to others, is that it's privacy first, right? It's not opt into privacy, it's opt out of privacy. Whereas as I understand it, as of the time of this recording, OpenAI and Google follow an opt into privacy model. And so you have to be careful. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you're using Grammarly in your practice, but Grammarly recently incorporated AI. And I don't know if they made it well known or not, but by default, they use your data uh, in training Grammarly. So the problem I think for lawyers is these tools are becoming more and more integrated into all kinds of software, and we have to be vigilant about looking at what is it using and how is it using the data, because I imagine that there are a number of people who use Grammarly not understanding that once they incorporated AI, that their writings were going to be used to train Grammarly's AI model, right? So we want to be vigilant, and they're popping up everywhere. My PDF reader now has AI, and it says, "Would you like me to summarize this document for you?" And so I did some research. There's a guy who does a lot of stuff with the ABA about technology. He seems to think that its privacy model is safe for lawyers to use. So again, not saying you should take his word for it or my word for it. You should do your own research and make sure that you are competent in taking a look at the Trust Center, at the privacy policies, how they use your information. And if you feel uncomfortable, then what we should do is look at either being a little more generic, like what I've demonstrated for you here, or anonymizing data. So let me find, I believe I have something that's been anonymized. So let me just take a quick look here. I'm going to stop screen sharing so that you can't see my client information. And I'm going to find a document that I have. So here's one. Let me just bring this up. Okay. Let me start my screen share again. Okay, so this is my PDF reading program. I use PDF Expert on the Mac. I'm sure that you can find anything else, but what I did was I just went through, and the beauty of this program, and I'm sure that other programs do it, is it has a redaction feature. And so I can say edit and redact. And what I'm going to do is find the word respondent. And then this helpfully shows me everywhere it shows up. And now what I'm going to do is just say black them all out. Okay. And so now anywhere the word respondent appeared, it has now been blacked out. And this is not just a surface level blacking out. It is a true redaction. So if I save this PDF and I email it to somebody, there's no way for them to find the word that I've redacted. There are some people, and I've had it happen recently in a case where somebody submitted data to me. They tried to redact it, but what they did was they just drew black boxes over the words. And the way that my PDF reader rendered those was it made them gray instead of black. And I was able to read everything that they thought that they had redacted. So if you're redacting documents, make sure that you're using a tool that does real redactions, because now if I search for the word respondent, oh, give me just a moment. Let me bring that back up. Apologize. Okay, let me just get the screen share going again. And you can see that if we look at the word, if I search for the word respondent now, nothing shows up. It found 0 here. So that's another thing that you can do. And now we can take this document. And for right now, I'm going to use the Westlaw product because I haven't done that yet. We're going to go to co-counsel. And I'm just going to say summarize. So I'm going to say summarize this complaint. We'll upload my redacted document. Download sample. And, oh no, it was here. And demand. Oh. There we go. Okay. So now we'll just do a quick summary. We're hoping a quick summary. And while we wait for that, we'll do one other thing here. We're going to check our work. And what I want to do is paste in that little bit on demur that had all the cases, right? Because we want to avoid hallucinations. So now I'm just going to check and make sure, and this is another, this used to be just called the quick check. It was kind of like, it was shepherdizing. Then they changed it to West check. Now they call it quick check. So now quick check is what was known as West check or shepherdizing, but now with some AI features, which are going to help us do the opposite of hallucinate. Okay, let's take a look at our summary. All right, there's our summary. The nature of the complaint, California Labor Code, alleges breach of contract, takes place in Los Angeles County, terminated 2021. And the nice thing about the Westlaw product is this. And again, I think this is going to be true with the Lexis product as well. I'm just not as familiar with it. But it actually footnotes its notes, and it hyperlinks, and you can see that it's now highlighting on the right everything that it is summarizing. And so the beauty of doing that is that you can check its work. You can check for hallucinations, right? You can see that it is citing a particular thing, and you can say, okay, where is that in the complaint? And you can look for that in the complaint, and it takes you straight to its source material. And it will do this with a large volume. I had it summarize 4,000 pages of an appellate record.
I don't think we can see the summary, sir.
Oh, shoot. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, let me do a new share. I just realized that I'm not sharing my desktop. Okay, so here we go.
There we
Here's
go.
the product. Thank you for speaking up. And you can see that as I click on a footnote here on the left, it takes me directly, and you can see that orange highlighting. If we go towards the end, you can see it just pops around. And so we don't have to trust it when it comes to its summary. We can look at the summary and then verify that that's what the source material says. Now let's take our quick check. All right, so this was, again, and I realize I'm popping around a lot, but I don't want you to sit there and have to watch the server think. But here's what's kind of nice. What it does first, the first tab is, hey, here are cases not cited in the materials you uploaded that you might want to take a look at, that your opponent or somebody might have omitted. And so this gives us Morris versus JP Morgan Bank and talks about the demur again. And it says, this is a frequently cited case that wasn't cited by, in this case, Claude. It has a tab for warnings. And the beauty of warnings is, first, it goes through, are there any cases that disagree or, have a yellow Westlaw flag? And here we can see that it tells us, here are the cases. This top part is the case, and then this is a decline to extend, called into doubt by statute. And I find that these are not great. Okay, these are so-so, but it at least gives me a check, and I look at it for myself. This part I love. This third tab is quotation analysis. Now, we didn't have anything in the text that had a quote, but the beauty of this quotation analysis is it'll go down to the letter and it shows you side by side. Here's the quote in your brief. Here is the quote directly from the case, and it will be letter perfect as to any omission, right? If you capitalize a letter and it's lowercase in the original text, it'll highlight that difference. It is overly cautious for every place where part of the text has been omitted and you put it in ellipsis. It'll flag it as possibly mischaracterizing, which to me is a little alarmist. But if you're looking at your opponent's brief, it does a great job of looking for any omission, and it puts the entire paragraph into context. So I'm sorry I didn't have that for you here. And then there's a table of authorities. And then these are the things that you can ask it to do. Steve rightly told me that we're almost out of time and I should take questions. So I want to make sure that I answer your questions as we go. And I realize it's been a whirlwind tour, but please look at that resource sheet because I think it has a little more detailed information about the ethical caveats, a little more information about where you can be looking for trust information, the different standards and things like that. I've tried to make it a good couple of pages, not too long, that you can quickly look to.
Stu will be sending that out to those of us who are in attendance.
Perfect. Questions now that I've taken up all your time?
Well, excellent presentation. Thank you, Judge.
No questions at all?
Yeah, actually, I have one. Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand. Sorry. So do you always have to put in there, don't make it up?
You don't. Oh, great question. You don't always have to, but I find the more, and this is something that you'll find if you look at my prompt. So one of the things that you can do in the settings for Claude and other things is you can give it kind of a prefatory prompt for all your questions. And so I have a huge prompt that I put into mine. It tells it words that I don't like to use. It tells it use the active voice. It says use short words, all kinds of things like that. And then I tell it don't hallucinate, don't make stuff up. And more importantly, when it summarizes, because I don't always use the Westlaw feature to summarize things, like if I'm summarizing a case, it's a lot faster for me to do it in Claude. But I can say, give me cites to the original source material. Don't create a cite. Or one thing that I use AI for quite a bit is I'll say, list all the exhibits that counsel cites in their closing briefs so that I can pull that list of exhibits that they've specifically cited. And I'll say things like cite to the actual page and line from the brief so that I can do that, so that I can find those citations. Because sometimes it will, and this is something that happens frequently with AI, sometimes it gets the citation for the case right, it gets the pinpoint cite wrong. Okay, so again, never trust it. Just like, again, a mediocre but not incompetent law clerk, don't trust its work. You can't trust it. What you can do is you can use it as a brainstorming type of thing. Or for summarization, it's fine. But really, I can't emphasize this enough. It has to be your work ethically. It has to be your work intellectually. And what you're using it for is to cut short the rote things that you might delegate to a secretary or a law clerk or something like that, to give you brainstorming ideas when you're stuck for where to start. Those are the things that I think, at least at the current stage of AI, are both the practical in terms of it's actually good at these things, and ethical in terms of you need to check its work. I think that that's kind of the balance to be struck as of April 2025. Great question.
Thank you so much. This is a great presentation.
Any other questions before we break? Okay.
Judge, I was intrigued by a story I saw on TV this last week about a fellow that appeared before a New York court and presented made his presentation in an AI generated case where he actually created an avatar on a video and
Mm-hmm.
presenting his legal case. And the judge just said, wait a minute, is that your attorney, or who is this that's appearing for you? And then he had to explain that he was using AI, an avatar, and created his whole legal presentation for the court. And the court would have nothing to do with it. They were angry. They chewed him out, said, "We're not having that in this court." What is your view about the I don't know, efficacy, the ethical considerations connected with that? Should people appearing in pro se be able to do that as part of their defense, or are they boxed in somehow because of this new technology that people don't understand?
So I think that not knowing enough about that particular situation, I want to avoid, giving opinions on things that I'm probably unqualified to give opinions on. But I'll tell you what my reaction is, right? The first thing that I think is kind of interesting is when it comes to AI, the U.S. Patent Office and the U.S. Copyright Office have both determined that AI created works are not patentable and not copyrightable because to get a U.S. patent, you must be a legal person, and an AI is not a legal person. And same thing for copyright. And so there's a pretty famous case where a comic book writer wrote the text but had AI generate the comic book images. And the U.S. Copyright Office said, your text is copyrighted, but we refuse to copyright the images because a human being or a legal person didn't create them. The same thing has happened with the Patent Office, and that case has actually gone to the Court of Appeal, and there's a decision rendered by one of the federal circuits that says AI produced works are not patentable because a person did not create them. And so if we extrapolate or we use that as, okay, a person representing themselves using an avatar or something like that to present for them in court, I would think the same analysis would generally apply that number one, that's not a human being, so it can't represent you. And number two, I don't think that anything that the AI did would be legally cognizable, at least not at this point. Where I think it could be very useful for self-represented litigants is now we have tools that are becoming more reliable all the time. It used to be if you posed a legal question to an AI, it would give you a hallucination and it wouldn't give you any caveats. Now, what it will do is it'll say, I'm just an AI. You shouldn't trust me. And if you look at the answer that it gives you, and I won't go back to screen sharing, but on the demurrer thing that I had it write out, it said Claude can make mistakes. Please double check responses. And so then we go to the Westlaw product to check the responses and make sure that the case citations are correct. I think that what's going to happen, and this is something that Steve said, I am not as alarmist as some people when it comes to AI is going to take our jobs. Here's who I believe will take our jobs. People who know how to use AI, right? In the same way that spreadsheets did not get rid of accounting, right? Word processors did not get rid of secretaries or administrative assistants. It changed the nature of what they did, right? And those bookkeepers and accountants who learned how to use back in the day Lotus 1-2-3 and now Excel were still able to work in the field, and those who were not were not. And there's always a very high level of skepticism, especially in the legal field, when it comes to a new technology, right? Lawyers were the last to adopt Word because they were still on WordPerfect. Lawyers are always a little reticent to adopt what is the current trend. So what I think is going to happen is I think people who can use AI effectively and ethically and don't use it as a substitute for their legal reasoning or writing, but use it as a springboard for their actual work are going to become more efficient, right? Those who use it as a substitute for their legal analysis and reasoning, they're going to get found out and be in a bad place. And those who are able to kind of bridge those worlds and still have those skills that we worked so hard to develop, but are able to then leverage the AI to do the rote stuff faster, right? I don't feel like outlining this brief. Anybody could do that, right? So that's what I'm going to delegate. But when it comes to the writing, I'm going to make sure that that goes. One thing that I frequently do, especially with the Westlaw product, is after I finish writing, I'll put the documents into co-counsel and I'll say, go through the two briefs. Are there any arguments that I have not addressed in my award? Are there any arguments that I have not addressed in my ruling? Because a lot of times when you're in the thick of it, you don't realize until after you filed it, right? That you forgot to address the argument that you had written a note to yourself, oh, make sure that you write X, Y, and Z. And so I find it's a really good, proofreader in that sense. Like, what did I miss? What am I forgetting? And I think that those kinds of things where we can leverage the technology to do that faster than a human being would, those are the areas where I think it's going to be really meaningful. So I think it is going to take jobs in a sense, but it's going to be that other human beings are taking those jobs, or other human beings are getting that business because they can produce at a more rapid rate, if that makes sense. And I could be totally wrong.
Jack, there was a question by George Spanos here on the call. So which program are you using for redacting? And also secondarily, is Google Docs a safe way to delete identifying information using the find and replace feature?
So I am using a program called PDF Expert. I believe there are other products that will do the same, but make sure that they're actually redacting. I want to be careful about what I say. When it comes to Google products in general, I do not put sensitive information onto anything involving anything with Google products for the free tier of anything. Okay. And so if you're using the free tier of Google Docs, then I would say probably not my choice personally for legal work. Now, there are paid Google products like Google, they've changed the name of it a few times, but I think it's Google Workspace. So there are paid versions of Google products that are more privacy focused and where Google isn't necessarily inspecting, right, what you're doing. But my suggestion is if you're using anything free, chances are you're giving up something in security and privacy. Generally speaking, security and privacy are not going to be free. And so I would look very carefully at their trust center and their privacy policies and any information that you can get on how they use your data. So again, I'm not saying Google is bad. I'm not saying Google is wrong, but just to my knowledge, the free tier is not going to keep client data confidential, and you should look into their paid products and look carefully at their trust center and how they store and use your data. Now, I will say this, Google has excellent security. And so if you're worried about will Google get hacked or are they storing the data in a way that is easily accessible to others, I don't think that's true at all. I think they're state of the art. The question is whether their data is being used for, whether the data that you give to Google is being used for their marketing purposes or for their training models. And that's something that I can't speak with intelligence on because I haven't looked.
I wanted to, unless there's any other urgent questions, I want to thank Judge Lucky for his time and his expertise in bringing us slightly up to date. We'll never be as up to date as Jack, I can promise you that. But I do want to express my deep appreciation for his presentation tonight. He's raised our knowledge base for sure, and given us ways to look at AI, which are hopefully not as intimidating as we thought when we first came into the MCLE tonight.
Steve, Steve, I want to ask a question though. Can you assure us and guarantee that Judge Lucky is not artificially created?
He's just an avatar.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a commercial that my buddy told me, and I don't know this for sure, but it's an AI joke commercial for Virgin Airlines or Virgin Cruises with Jennifer Lopez. And he told me, I haven't checked this out, but he told me that it's actually a computer generated AI Jennifer Lopez that was licensed for the ad. Don't know if that's true, but do a Google search for it or an AI search for it and take a look and fact check that. But I have my email in the materials that I think will be sent out afterwards. So feel free to email me. Steve has my phone number and he has my permission to give it to any of you to call or text me if you have questions. I just don't generally put my personal phone number out on something that's recorded on Zoom. And for any of you who want to leave, please do, because we're way over time. But if any of you have questions, I'm happy to stay and answer your questions as best as I can.
And of course, Judge Lucky is now part of JAMS.